All right, we have got an awesome night lined up for you tonight. Our first guest, which we're so honored to have, is Matty Backerman. Matty is making his directorial debut with Alien Abduction, a sci-fi thriller based on the legend of the Brown Mountain Lights. It's being released by IFC Midnight. Previously, Matty was the founder and CFO of Natural Selection, a privately held equity-backed motion picture company based in Los Angeles. He has executive produced Paul Schuring's The Experiment, starring Adrian Brody and Forrest Whitaker. He's also founded Now or Over Records, Incorporated, an independent record label with distribution through Warner Brothers and ADA. Matty attended the A.B. Freeman School of Business at Tulane University, where he obtained his bachelor's degree in management and information systems with a minor in photography. He's a member of the Directors Guild of America. We're going to be talking about a couple of his films tonight. Without any further delay, let's get him on the line. Matty, good evening. Welcome to AM 630 and the Fringe Radio Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Matty, it's an honor to have you, and sorry we had to change schedules up, but we finally got you here again. It's an honor to have you here and talk about your work this evening.
Absolutely.
So,
happy to be.
How did you get into, I read a little bit of your background, but how did you get into, I'm an IT professional by day, how did you get into filmmaking and doing what you do?
I mean, I've always been obsessed with movies since I was a little kid. It was kind of the dream to get behind the camera and start working from that perspective. And I can't give you the direct route.
Okay.
But it was a lot of working behind the scenes on films, and then finally having the courage to kind of do it myself.
And the thing is, there are more and more independent filmmakers. I mean, we see all these big budget releases like Godzilla, of course, I think, which was kind of hyped up to be the movie of the year, and all these productions, all these big, movie companies like Paramount and Legendary and Warner Brothers, all these. But yet, I'm finding that as I get into more of the independent films, that's truly where the real talent lies and where the real stories are.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the major studios rely on tent poles and existing content in order to create a project from it. Because it's really about, for them, it's about something that already exists that they can market. Because they spend, $200, $300 million on a movie like Godzilla.
Right.
Whereas, like our little tiny film, we had the ability to kind of do whatever we needed to because our budget was so low. I always say, it costs the same amount of money to go see Paranormal Activity
right.
as it does to see Avatar. It's the same amount to walk into that theater, but Paranormal Activity was made for $15,000.
Wow.
And Avatar was made for $250 million.
And again, sometimes the simpler films, and I'm not trying to stereotype that, but I mean the ones that don't have the huge big budget CGI, they're the films that again are so much more intriguing and so much more from the heart. You can tell that just by the way they're made.
You get more creative control when you're dealing with an independent film.
Right. Exactly.
Without the studio telling you what you need to do.
So let's talk about some of your stuff. Of course, Alien. Now your website is alienabductionfilm.com.
Yes.
What got you to do this kind of project? What drew you into this?
Well, really, it's the Brown Mountain Lights. So my family have lived up in the mountains of North Carolina since the 1970s. My grandparents. And I would go and visit them, and I would always hear the stories of the Brown Mountain Lights, which are lights that have appeared on this mountain for over 800 years. It dates back to the Cherokee and Catawba Indians. And it's well documented. It's been seen by thousands of people. I saw the lights myself, full on. It freaked me out. I actually have pictures of my experience there up on my site. If you go to alienabductionfilm.com,
okay.
I have a little blog section, and you can see the pictures that I posted up there. So this also correlates to a rash of abduction stories from the area. People who I've interviewed and spoken with and actually put in the movie who claim they've been abducted after seeing these lights.
So now the light, I mean, I will be honest with you. Until I came across your site, I believe it was Joshua Warren. I read a little bit about him talking about the Brown Mountain Lights. Are these spacecraft, Matty? Are they what? I mean, what exactly is it, or is it just? I have no idea what this is.
You are not alone.
Okay.
No one can explain it. I mean, really, the government has been there and studied it on 3 different occasions that we know of. The military is definitely involved. The scientists, National Geographic did a whole special there. Actually, Joshua Warren led it. So it's completely unexplained. These lights are seen, people go missing, and it dates back so far that it predates electricity. I mean, it's a phenomenon that's very, very real.
And obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of people have taken pictures of these things. It just doesn't seem to get a lot of notoriety, like a Roswell type of thing, or a Corona, or even the Area 51 stuff. Has it been kind of silenced, you believe?
I think this is bigger than Roswell. Okay. I think this is bigger than Area 51 because, unlike those places, you can actually go to Brown Mountain, and right off the side of a major highway, you can see these lights for yourself. So it's not that it's been silenced, but it's certainly, throughout the years, has, the government's tried to disprove anything. I think it's, I don't know why.
As far as the alien abduction phenomena, has there been a rash of people that have claimed to have been abducted in the area?
Yeah, that's how I first got into this. I was working up there, and the nicest guy that I worked with for years told me this story, and I thought he was crazy. He told me the story about being abducted and taken onto a craft, and coming back with this knowledge and information that he didn't have before. And I just really did not believe him at all. I was very skeptical.
Right.
But then I started interviewing local people when we started making the film, which, police officers, school teachers, people who would not go on the record eventually. Like I interviewed this police officer there, sheriff, who told me a story about going to the Brown Mountain Overlook, seeing a light, this light then hovering over the top of his cop car, chasing him down the highway for miles. Finally, he woke up on the side of the road 18 hours later, has no idea how he got there.
Wow.
After I finished the interview, he was so freaked out about it, he would not let me use it in the film. But this is a reoccurring theme in the area. People see these lights and people go missing.
Do they now? Again, he mentioned to you that it was a craft. I mean, is there a lot of UFO sightings, or are a lot of spacecraft sightings in the area?
All around that area, yes.
Wow.
Constantly, and people describe it very similarly, which is 3 lights that seem to move about, and they separate from each other sometimes, but mostly they hover in a triangular configuration. And then it's the typical classic gray aliens that people see, and that's what's been the most compelling thing.
Now, I would assume that your film Alien Abduction that has come out, is it about people in the area? I mean, is it based on a true story, or is it based on bits? And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's based on a true story, and the opening of the film is actually documentary style, where we interview local people. Joshua Warren's actually in the opening of it, a scientist from Appalachian State University who's been studying the lights his whole career. We interviewed 2 local people. The opening is a documentary. Then we get into what is called sound footage. similar to like the Blair Witch style,
right,
or Paranormal Activity, where it's found footage, the point of view camera of a family who go camping off of Brown Mountain and see lights over their campsite. Now, from there, things go off the rails after they see these lights. And the camera is then recovered years later. And this is the actual footage we're watching.
Gotcha. Interesting. Did it? I actually had some people that sent in some questions, and a friend of mine that actually saw the film said it was outstanding, unbelievable. I need to see it. I'm gonna see it. Said was it taken from the place? Did he say that the main character, the character is somebody who has some physical problems or something?
Yes. So the whole movie is shot through the camera of an 11-year-old autistic boy.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I did that is I actually I was talking to a psychologist here in Los Angeles, and he had a patient who stopped speaking, an autistic patient, young kid. And the therapist came up with this idea. He said he handed him one of those flip cameras. And for about a week, when the kid came back, he had suddenly cracked and started talking again. So for some reason, that camera became almost his security blanket. It gave him the ability to focus on something and kind of weed out the rest of the overload of information he was getting from the rest of the world. And it started getting him to socially interact with people. Now, he used that camera everywhere. And, that was the idea of this film, too, is that, if you watch a movie like Cloverfield or you watch a movie, you expect at some point when a giant monster comes onto the screen, you're going to ditch that camera and go running. This kind of gives you the reason why that camera stays on.
Yeah, and Blair Witch was kind of, it's sad that I know they did a couple, I believe they did one or two other ones, but the first one, by far one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen. Just all the screaming and yelling was enough to keep you on edge the whole time.
Yeah.
And yet you never really saw anything,
Well, you actually see stuff in this movie, so
okay.
It's even more fun.
Now, did you write this movie? Is it your screenplay? Did you put this together?
I did. My best friend and I, Rob Lewis, wrote this, and it was kind of a dream. All the pieces just suddenly popped into place, and before we knew it, we were in North Carolina shooting with a real lights are seen, with an amazing crew.
Interesting. I've got some questions for you. Let me go ahead and put a few out there some of our listeners have sent in. Our friend Sky from Cleveland writes in, says, what does Matty think the alien agenda is, and also does he think that our government has knowledge of them or are working in partnership with them?
Well, I think there are two types of agendas. There's the malevolent agenda and the benevolent agenda. And there are different species and different types, just like different humans have different plans for what they
right.
Different governments have different concepts of what they want to do. Same thing with the extraterrestrial visitations we receive. You talk to a lot of people who have contact through meditation, and they seem to have really positive, good experiences. I don't know if you've dealt with any of that.
I haven't.
There's a starseed phenomenon that's going on right now. That type of stuff is really benevolent and kind of beautiful. And then there's the experimentation that we do to other creatures. As a marine biologist will go out into the ocean, that fish is swimming around and suddenly is caught by a net. That net is a complete foreign object. It had no idea that there was anything else in the universe before that net hit them. And that's what we are. Being, taken out of the ocean, experimented on, maybe put some tags on us, and then track us for a little while. Then come pick up those tags and take the readings off of it.
And see what happened.
Yes. see what happened.
Well, and again, it seems like a lot of people that have gone through the abduction scenario, I've had the honor to interview many of them, and it seems that for the most part, what I notice, Matty, is most of them, it is a recurring thing. It seems to start at a very young age and continues on into midlife and sometimes even further.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it's a terrifying experience, and sometimes it's an uplifting one. And who's to say which one you're going to receive?
When you made this film, I mean, kind of like we do our show here, it's about being open-minded without a doubt. But as a filmmaker, this is kind of I don't want to say it's uncharted waters, but it's definitely different waters. Do you get some people that when you touch on this type of subject, maybe question it a little bit or say, hey, why in the heck would you do something like that?
Yeah, of course. You always come up with skepticism on every corner. And actually, when I first started making this film, I was very skeptical. I did not really even believe in most of this. Through making this movie, it changed my perceptions entirely and opened my mind up because I started interviewing these people and sitting down with them and understanding it. And then the thing that really just put it over the top for me was my own experience seeing the Brown Mountain Lights. There was nothing that could explain what that was.
Right. Do you feel that you might have gone through an abduction yourself?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so at all. But I'm definitely fascinated with the topic. I mean, I since I've made the film, many people have reached out to me and started talking to me if they felt more comfortable, especially after doing radio shows like yours. People have reached out and said, "This is my story," and they know they'll receive an open mind when they talk to me.
Right, the respect. Well, and that's the big thing is that I feel so many people. I mean, again, we've talked for so many years on this program about being open-minded. That's why we do it, And we respect the people that come on, whether it's you, like a filmmaker that talks about this stuff, or somebody that you interview that has claimed to have been through one of these scenarios. And I think that's the tough thing is there's so many skeptical people out there. It is changing. I think it's changing rapidly. But I think a lot of these people just want a little bit of that. The self-assurance that they're not crazy, that they're not going nuts, and somebody will take them half seriously. That will at least give them the respect and time to listen to their story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole thing is not being ridiculed for what has actually happened to you. Some of these people are traumatized from it, and it's really affected their lives, and you have to take that seriously.
When you interviewed the different people up there, did some of them tell you some unbelievable stories? I mean, some pretty
constantly.
deep stuff?
Yeah, constantly. So, we did the premiere in Morganton, North Carolina,
okay,
which is probably about the closest little town to where the Brown Mountain Lights are. We had about 700-plus people there. And I went to the audience after the film, and I asked, I said, how many people here have seen the Brown Mountain Lights? And I'm not kidding you, about 75% of the audience raised their hands. And I actually put the video, I took out my camera and I said, let's do that again. And I videotaped the whole conversation. And that's also up on my site. But, people came up to me and told me story after story of, it's one thing seeing the lights across a giant valley.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one to see them 10 feet away in a parking lot where they move around trees and around cars intelligently. So people tell me these stories, and it just fascinates me more and more.
Were you able, in making the film, first of all, a couple questions I had for you. One, was it actually made in North? Was it made there on location in that area?
Yeah. 99% of the film was shot right there where the real lights are seen.
Were you able to catch any real footage and put that into the film?
No, we didn't have the actual lights. We didn't actually capture them on film. I did see them, but at the time I really wasn't expecting to, and I got my iPhone out as quickly as I could, and the pictures that did show up, there are orbs all around us.
Wow.
And they're just obviously there. But we didn't use that in the actual film. What we did do was a pretty good replication of what people claim to have seen there.
Gotcha. Tracy from the University of Utah writes and says, Matty, was the FBI ever brought in to investigate, FBI or any other government agencies like FEMA brought in to investigate any of these Brown Mountain sightings?
You know, never the FBI. However, there's a ton of military activity up there. Project Blue Book actually studied the Brown Mountain Lights back in the 1960s before it was shut down. And it was unexplained. So that's the division of the U.S. Air Force that was specifically set up to study UFOs.
Gotcha.
To debunk UFOs, I should say.
Right.
There's a story up there about that I met this couple who own a restaurant in Morganton, North Carolina, and an Army colonel came in there one day and said, I need a restaurant who can supply 400 meals a day for 2 months. So they of course took the job. It's a massive, cash flow income for them. They would drive this giant truck up to a checkpoint. They'd see 2 military police. They would unload the food, and they only saw those 3 personnel throughout that entire 2 months, right at Brown Mountain.
Unbelievable.
So there clearly is military activity going on there in a major way.
Do they tend to want to keep it suppressed?
I think so. I mean, if you do go up there with any type of equipment or monitoring equipment or, Joshua Warren went up there with a whole National Geographic crew.
Right.
And he said they were getting followed by black SUVs and people taking pictures of them.
Wow. Do you believe that there could there be maybe like a government, like an Area 51, but maybe like a government installation of sites of sorts up there, Matty? Maybe, I mean, they're, I don't like to always talk about that interaction between our government and aliens, but who knows? You never know. Do you believe there could be some sort of government site up there, a test site or something up there that they're keeping people away from?
Everyone always talks about underground bases. And what's interesting is that there's a very well-known underground base in Kentucky that is in the Appalachian Mountains in the same mountain range as Brown Mountain. So there very well could be an entrance or a piece of that tunnel system that comes out there.
So obviously somebody's got something to hide.
Yes.
Or at least keep you away from.
Yeah, and there's so many theories of that, the reptilian aliens who are heavily in control of our government. That's more of a harder to prove conspiracy theory.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly my phone line goes dead and you can't hear from me anymore.
Did you
just for saying it?
Sure. Did you get the one question I had is that since making this film, did you have anybody ever approach you and say, "Hey, what are you talking about this crazy stuff?" Or I'm not talking about peers or anything, but did you receive any sort of I guess you want to call them threatening type of messages?
I've never received anything threatening, but a healthy curiosity from government agencies.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, again, it's one of those topics that is just it's getting more and more momentum. Then it seems like it dies down, but then it picks up speed again, especially if something happens to somebody or somebody steps forward. And obviously your film again, the trailer definitely caught it for me. I mean, the trailer is enough to scare the heck out of you, I think. But in a good way, if you're into this, or not into it necessarily, if you have the curiosity. Where can people see the movie, Matty? I mean, I was on the site and I saw it premiered in a lot of different cities. Are you going to continue to roll this film out throughout the country?
Well, in theaters right now, you could see it through on demand and iTunes and Amazon and Google Play and any cable network that you have.
Okay.
It's all on demand at the moment, and we're doing incredible. Actually, I think we're one of the highest-selling movies for IFC.
Gotcha.
For their midnight division.
You want to take a phone call?
Sure, let's do it.
Well, let's give it a try. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk. You're on with Matty Backerman.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted to discuss the current affair in the Ukraine, if that's not too far off topic.
Sure.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, in World War II, our propagandists decided that, the world could be dominated by certain land masses coming under the sphere of influence of certain countries. For instance, Japan decided for, conquest, they needed to take China over for starters. That was important to get that part of the world. Russia was determined to get Western Europe under their sphere of influence, just as, Hitler and his bunch were trying to take over Europe and also take over Asia. So even though it seems like a small stakes war, this Ukrainian war, this could tip the balance of power in the favor of Russia if they're able to get up enough steam to be able to take over all these former satellites. In other words, it's not always just one for one. It becomes a global balancing act for world domination.
Right.
And the idea that they could blow past us into Syria with this one aircraft carrier, and the United States doesn't try to block them or engage them in any way, that's pretty serious. And from the looks of it, the Ukrainian government right now is losing to these rebel forces. They had a helicopter shot down. They lost one of their top training generals and about 15 troops. In other words, the idea that our president would get up in front of West Point and say, we're going to count on the rest of the world to take care of our national security is quite foolhardy. The Russians could make an effort to actually try to gain Alaska back if they really became determined enough.
Well, I think that you're somewhat correct in everything you're saying, but there's a different shift that's going on right now. And Russia has actually been in control of the Ukraine since the fall of the Soviet Union, and most of those other countries. The president who was in the Ukraine was a direct crony of Vladimir Putin. And there was a division of wealth that went on there, and he's been, they've been controlling that entire region. They still do, from Kazakhstan to, all the Belarus and Georgia. All the Russian republics are still controlled at the very hierarchy by the old communist group.
Okay, well, what about Syria then?
Syria, that is also the same boat. That's a giant mess, Syria. There is no clear picture of what's going to happen there.
Do you guys feel that the mainstream media? I mean, I don't know what your take is, Matty or caller, but it seems like the whole thing it's really quelled down. You hear little bits and pieces on different news agencies and stuff like that. I think the independent stations talk a little more. Well, they don't talk a little bit more. They talk a lot more about really what's going on. But it seems like it's quite suppressed by the media, and then every now and then it flares up a little bit when some big event happens.
Yeah, the Syria is pretty much the forgotten war at this point. We don't even talk about what's going on.
No, we don't.
What's happening in Libya right now, which is what's going on throughout the Middle East is a battle between the Sunni and the Shiite populations, and that has the ability to explode from Syria into the entire region.
Exactly.
That's
a lot of it's got to do with oil.
Yeah.
But that's really been put on the back burner, so to speak, in the American press. If you think about
it all has to do with oil, which is why we went into Libya and we didn't go into Syria, because Syria does not have oil and Libya does.
Agreed. Any more questions for him?
Well, at what point would the American people fight back, and not against a country like Afghanistan or Iraq, in a proxy war, which in that proxy war we did quite well against the Soviets, I will note. Our tanks knocked their tanks to pieces. One of our tanks could knock out 25 of theirs, of what the Iraqis had gotten from the Soviets. So I don't think their technology is on par with the United States technology. But our will to fight is really not there anymore. We've got a very, very weak president now. He's probably trying to play some kind of a game where he's trying to appease the Soviets. But once the thing got completely out of control militarily, I doubt if we could get the genie back in the bottle again.
If it's not popular, our president will not do anything about it.
True. Very true.
That's the bottom line. If it's a popular opinion, then he sways with it. But I don't see him leading us down another path of war at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Hey, have a good night. Take care. Be safe out there.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. Speaking of course, we're talking about your film, but this country, this world, Matty, what do you think? We always talk about we talk about alien invasions. I think that seems to be a little bit more Hollywood based, and of course, a lot of people talk about abductions. But my take on alien abductions and your cliche of like a fish being caught in a net, a foreign object grabs it, it tags it, doesn't seem to care if it inflicts any pain, and then watches it and studies it. These gray aliens, from everything that the many people that I've interviewed and the books that I've read and the interviews that I've listened to, they seem to just be the worker bees. They're out there, gathering information. To me, somewhat emotionalist, no emotions at all, emotionalist, and they're just there to perform a task. What do you think? How do you think this country, how do you think this world would respond if, when you talk about an alien invasion, or maybe not even putting the word invasion there, but aliens showing up that they're not really here to conquer by any means, but they're here for natural resources, or they're here for some other reason, whatever it may be, and just kind of disregard human life. They're just here for one thing. What do you think people would do? Do you think people would stand up and fight? Do you think we would back down?
I don't know if it would be a war, but it was certainly, like Bill Clinton said recently, and Ronald Reagan said in a very famous speech to the UN, there's one thing that could unite the entire planet, and that's if we were to come across extraterrestrials. And everyone would band together. I don't think it would be a war. I don't think it would be something like that. And and like most people, I was having this conversation with Jim Marrs the other day, the author of Alien Agenda. Mm-hmm. And he said, the opening of his book is really clear. It says UFOs exist. It's a proven fact. we've been visited. It dates. Let's just get past that, and let's talk about the real facts and history of what has happened throughout society. So if you look back to ancient Sumeria or the Anunnaki and really look at, all the, I know this is very ancient aliens of me to say, but it's true that extraterrestrials have been on this planet from inception. And we most likely are the descendants, DNA-wise, of a hybrid culture.
Well, I can buy into it without, I can buy into it. It's definitely more than a possibility. I really, though, again, I think that I think it would change things entirely. I mean, I know you've experienced the lights out in North Carolina. I've seen a couple of craft, and I've said this so many times in this program, Matty, that if they are of this planet, of this world, we've got some amazing technology. But I kind of tend to doubt that we do. I think for most people, until Joey the alien comes out on the White House lawn, or we see the spacecraft in the Smithsonian, it's gonna be hard to convince everybody. But I believe that I agree with you 100% that if there is that day, if that sign does show up, if something happens that just nobody can dispute, it's going to change everything, and hopefully it will unite everybody. It will unite the whole human race.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I mean, look at Kepler. Kepler found a planet in the habitable zone of a sun, meaning that there's liquid water on it, just recently, about a month and a half ago. And it's the first Earth-like planet that we say is capable of sustaining life. Now, that is one of billions, if not trillions, of stars that also have habitable zone planets surrounding them in orbit. So we can't be so naive to think that, and arrogant to think that we are really, truly the only planet out there.
I agree. I've said it many times, if at least here in Utah, I had the opportunity to get down to Lake Powell a few years ago on a moonless night that was super clear, and laid back, in the darkness and looked up. And when you can actually see galaxies with your human eyes, with nothing else, and look at all those billions of lights out there, it would really be foolish to think that we are the only ones here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the the alien agenda. I don't know what that could actually be. I don't think anybody really has any clear indication of it. There's so many theories and there's so many things going on, but we are definitely not alone.
Right.
I believe that we've been visited. I know that these people are real when they tell me these abduction stories, and I'm sure you could put them to a polygraph and it would come out truthful.
When you interviewed the people, Matty, with the abductees, were some of them terrified? Were some of them? I know some abductees they claim they feel like they've been raped. Is the only term they can come up with. And then, of course, as you did mention in the start of our conversation, some also feel that it was I don't know if you want to call it a joyous event, but it wasn't so terrible. Did you tend to find more of the terrifying experience versus the non-terrifying experience?
You know what? Most of the people I was interviewing had good experiences.
Okay.
There were the few. That's what we really focused on more in the movie. That did not. That had really negative experiences. There's a woman who I interview who told me this story, and she had gone out to see the Brown Mountain Lights, come home, and when she saw the lights full on, the whole big group of people, there was probably 15, 20 people at the Overlook. She heads home, walks in her bedroom, and is sucked up against the ceiling of her bedroom. She then wakes up in the morning jumps out of bed, and her husband jumps out of bed next to her, and he says, "Oh my God, I just had the worst nightmare. I was sucked up against the ceiling of our house, and then I woke up here." Both of them realizing that they had the same, what they considered was maybe a dream. Their daughter comes running into their room and says, "Mom, Dad, where have you been for the last day and a half? We've been looking everywhere."
Wow.
The typical thing is for people to lose time.
Yeah.
In a major way. And this is story after story after story in the area.
Did any of them have any? Did any of them talk about any physical traces? Matty, potentially implants of sorts. I mean, or did you know what I mean? Did anybody have any physical evidence, or felt like they had some physical evidence?
Not in the Brown Mountain cases. That has never been talked about there. However, I would not put it past it to actually be happening.
Yeah.
The implant phenomenon is incredible. It's something that is undeniable proof that something is being put in these people.
Well, and sadly, Dr. Roger Lear just passed. Never had the opportunity. I emailed him back and forth several times. We were going to have him on the show. I know that he devoted so much of his life to it, and I believe, again, reading the different things and listening to different people and interviewing different people, I think there are more people that have these implants in them. They can't define what they are. There's nothing really. I mean, as far as technology, they seem to be a very simple device, if you will, at least just on the surface of looking at them. But I feel there are more people out there that do have them.
Yeah, I mean, think about our microchip processors and how small they've gotten throughout the years. I mean,
right.
We started off with a computer that was the size of a semi-truck. And the phone that I hold in my hand is now more powerful than 10 of those semis. So who's to say a tiny little device couldn't be a technology advanced race who have, Intel inside, man.
Right.
Made it smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where technology for us advances tenfold every year.
Yeah, these Google glasses and stuff now, where you can just visually look at something and it brings you back all the information.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to think that an alien technology that tiny could be something biometric powered by our own bodies.
Yeah.
And we're a giant battery. Our entire body is salinated and conducts electricity.
Right. Yeah, we just it's amazing. I know that the couple that people that they've been able to pull out have been interesting. I don't think they found much as far as technology goes. I don't know if they really found much out of them. They tended to be quite interesting little devices, but the people that had them in have experienced so many different things. I know one person, Tim Cullen, who had the opportunity to interview, he has something in his ankle, right near his ankle. He'll never admit of an abduction scenario, but he does talk about he lives out in rural Colorado, I believe, or is it Nebraska, and talks about him and his wife being in the car, and they pull up to this four-way stop that's not many miles from their home, and not every time, but several times, they see what they refer to as a flying saucer. They see it for a second or two, and then they move on and go to the store, do whatever they do. But he actually, his implant was still in, or is still in, and has talked to Dr. Roger Lear several times before he passed. They had a good relationship. And Tim talks about just never being sick. Ever since this thing, however it got there, which he doesn't want to talk about, never having a cold or a flu again.
Yeah. These stories are repeated throughout our history.
Right.
And I think maybe it's just that we're more open-minded these days and are hearing more and more about these things. But this has happened throughout our history.
Exactly. We've got a couple minutes left, Matty. What other projects are you working on? Can you talk
I've got a really fun script that just finished that we're going to shoot in November, December, and it's called Ghost Detectives.
Okay.
And it's about a group of kids who set out to capture ghosts on their video cameras. And it's sort of like a Goonies, Spy Kids, like a really fun family film.
Gotcha. Is it going to be an independent one again, like Alien Abduction, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where can our listeners get your film? Just let them know one more time your website and where they can go find your film.
AlienAbductionFilm.com, and there's a Watch Now area, and that will show you on demand every cable service provider that you can watch it, along with iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, all the major satellite providers as well.
Gotcha. And it continues to open up, and you continue to have it open in different theaters across the country as well?
Yeah, they're normally like one-off theaters or festivals that we're screening at now. The full theatrical run ended, but it's all on demand right now.
Ah, very good. Yeah, we've got here in Salt Lake City. Of course, we got the big Sundance Festival in February, but there's a couple small little independent. There's actually in a little town here called Sugar House, which is on the south side of Salt Lake City. There's a small theater there called the Tower Theater, and they play Space Odyssey 2001 once a month. They play all these unique. Well, of course, not that that's a unique film, but all these interesting films, and hopefully someday we can if find a way to get one of your films in one of our theaters here, and people here in town could hear it.
That would be terrific.
Matty, I want to thank you for your time. It's Saturday night. Go ahead and get back to your family. It was such an honor to have you on, and I wish you continued success. I am going to go see the movie. Looks so interesting, and again, I just want to thank you for taking the time and sharing your thoughts and the work that you do to people like you and so many others, the independent filmmakers that people need to look more at. They need to be more open-minded, and just because it's something smaller compared to the Paramount big screen stuff, go look at the small stuff, because the heart and soul is in all these films, and all I can tell you is thank you for producing fine work like this.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It was a complete pleasure.
Okay, Matty, have a great weekend. Say hi to Kathy. Thank you very much for being here.
I will. Take care.
Okay, take care, my friend. Good night.